remember when I was a soldier. I remember when I was in Burma.
Amidst the horrors of a world war, we barely remember their story. The thousands of Africans taken to the jungles of Burma by Britain to fight the Japanese.
The order to move came to the West Africans, who were assigned the important job of clearing the Caledon Valley.
We young men, we are not worried. If death comes, it comes. If it doesn't come, it doesn't come.
This man was there.
It's a surprise that I survived it. It's a miracle.
His amazing story took me to Lagos, Nigeria, and from there across 3 continents and 8 decades. And in the jungles of Burma, I found heroism and courage I could never have imagined, and a debt of gratitude still strong after all these years. The Imperial War Museum in London. I came here 2 years ago. I've spent much of my life in Africa, and I've always been fascinated by the little-known story of the African soldiers who fought in Burma in the Second World War, the so-called Burma Boys. The museum's library is a treasure trove, and I found lots of memoirs about the Burma campaign, but all of them were written by British officers, so they only offer clues as to how the African soldiers felt. Then I found this memoir. It's by Isaac Fadeyebo. I recognize that name as Yoruba. They're the people who live in southwest Nigeria. And it's called A Stroke of Unbelievable Luck. As I started to read it, I felt that the luck was mine.
The heavy fire continued intermittently for more than 1 hour. A colleague of mine, I then knew for sure that I had been hit by bullets. I had a fractured femur very close to the knee, and 1 bullet also pierced my stomach just below the ribs. The situation was indescribable.
It's extremely rare, a detailed, first-hand account of what it was like to be an African soldier fighting for king and empire in that now distant war.
I thought I was going to die in the next few moments. His name was Suleiman. If their activities regarding our security had been detected by the Japanese troops, the chances were that they would be executed, perhaps along with us. Up till now, there is hardly any day I do not remember Suleiman and his family.
It's a story of courage and fear and tragedy. But Isaac Fadeyebo survived and wrote this account. I read it transfixed. I didn't know then that Isaac's story would take me on a journey I could scarcely imagine. But I did know straight away that I had to find out if he was still alive. So I travel back to Lagos, Nigeria, a city where I once lived, a place close to my heart. It has a daunting reputation, but I'll always look back on the 3 years I spent here with affection. I was a young reporter, I made wonderful friends. And although Lagos is difficult and frustrating, I was always treated with respect and courtesy by Nigerians. I will never forget that. You won't find many Nigerians today who even remember British rule. It ended more than 50 years ago, and this is a young country with modern challenges. Sometimes the problems seem overwhelming, but keeping a sense of humor always helps in Nigeria. Look deeper in Lagos, and you'll see hints of that British legacy. In old buildings, in old street names. grainy pictures of a young Queen Elizabeth visiting Lagos in 1956 suggest how much has changed. It was a time when British royalty still commanded unquestioning allegiance, not just at home, but in dozens of countries around the world. The grandeur, the illusion of greatness was still there, but in reality, Britain's power was fast receding. The infrastructure which my country, Britain, left behind in Nigeria often seems to be crumbling away these days. But overall, the British left a mixed legacy, and there are parts of it which leave me feeling very uncomfortable.
Strong, tough, most magnificently built race in the world, Negro soldiers march barefoot to their encampment. Africa fights for their cause and ours.
It's one of the forgotten stories of the Second World War. How Britain, in its hour of need, took almost 100,000 African soldiers to fight in the distant jungles of Burma against the all-conquering Japanese. In 1942, the Japanese swept through Asia. The British retreated in chaos, and the jewel of the empire, India, was under threat. In desperation, the British turned to Africa for reinforcements, which could help push the Japanese back.
And in spite of fierce resistance, the 81st drove the enemy from Frontier Hill.
It was one of the war's most brutal campaigns, and yet today the contribution of these African men is all but forgotten. Not just in Britain, but even in their own countries, like Ghana, Kenya, and above all, Nigeria. If I could find Isaac, I could learn so much about the Burma Boys. No one who worked on his memoir knew if he was still alive. I made many inquiries, many phone calls, and eventually discovered that Isaac is alive and in Lagos. I'd worked out that he's in his mid-80s. He was only 16 when he signed up to fight. He remembers those days of empire and colony, but his story is very dramatic and unusual, and it's incredible in every way that he's still with us here today to tell that story. Mr. Fadiobo, it's very nice to meet you. How are you, sir?
I'm talking for a long, long time.
Yeah, and you look well.
Oh,
You're
family?
strong. My family is very well, thank you. It's wonderful to see you, sir.
Yeah.
Good. And how are you feeling?
Fine.
Good. He wanted to show me proof of his war experience. 2 ancient scraps of paper that barely hint at his adventures. Okay. And then here, it says campaigns,
Campaign, Burma.
And then...
Burma campaign number 4. It was in 1944 that I fought in Burma. That campaign number 4, they say, you know.
It says medals, not yet decided.
Yes.
So you never got a medal?
No, I didn't get it. Why worry about medals, you know?
Do you wish you got a medal?
Well, if I get it, okay. I don't get it, okay. It doesn't bother me at all. There is proof that I fought, you know, in Burma, you know. That's sufficient for me, you know.
Freedom for you, freedom for everyone, freedom for me, freedom for mommy, freedom.
After the war, Nigeria became independent, and Isaac became a civil servant. He raised a family, traveled to Britain, to America. He was a successful man. I arrived just in time for Nigeria's presidential election, and Isaac went to vote at the local polling station. Since independence, Nigeria has suffered military coups, a civil war, terrible ethnic and religious violence. Isaac still has faith in a better future for his country. But what made him fight for the British all those years ago?
I saw the army, well, that's a good job, you know. So at the age of 16, something like I didn't know what I was doing, you know. You see. They call it youthful exuberance. So that's why I joined the army.
Did you feel any loyalty to the British cause in the Second World War?
Not at all. We were colonial people. There's no question of loyalty or patriotism. No. I saw people joining, and I followed suit, not knowing that I was heading for trouble.
Britain needed African soldiers, but as the colonial power stayed firmly in charge, it was almost impossible for an African to become a senior officer, and very few, white or black, questioned that. The British officers, were they good people? Were they kind to you, or were they?
Oh well, generally to every rule there must be an exception. Quite a number of them were good, very good indeed. But some look on us as black monkeys, people from the jungle. People thought black man has tail, but you guys who have been able to come out here and see us, that you know we have no tail.
Isaac left Nigeria on a troop ship in late 1943. They sailed round the Cape because the Mediterranean was not safe, and all the way across the Indian Ocean, docking at Bombay.
The journey took us 6 weeks plus, you know, from Lagos to Bombay. And our first experience that there is something like they call seasick. You won't be able to take food, you will be sneezing, you will be not feeling well. But after a few weeks, you get used to it, you know. That was the only excitement. It's very cool, very sea breeze is there. At times in some areas, the sea can be very rough, very turbulent, and at times very smooth.
They travelled across India to the Burma border. At first, it was all very exciting, forming friendships, building camps. A great adventure in an exotic new land. But everyone knew this could not last. The jungle was a tough environment, as Isaac discovered.
Very thick jungle. We don't have it here in Black Africa. Very steep hill. You have to walk with a stick in our hands, carrying, you know, in full marching order, and with a kit bag on our heads. If you make the mistake, if you slip, you are going to the foot of the hill.
Having met Isaac, I went back to Britain. I wanted to talk to Professor David Killingray, an expert on the Burma Boys who edited Isaac's memoir. He could explain why Britain turned to Africa for help in the war.
They were trained, particularly West African troops, in carrying stores and supplies, ammunition, by head in forested areas. And therefore you had this carrier potential which would be very useful to deploy in the steep valley slopes that were wooded in Burma. And so they perform rather well, and particularly in forested terrain. And probably without them, and their head-carrying capacity as porters, the war there would have been prosecuted much more slowly.
Then I tracked down the handful of surviving officers who led African troops. Why did their men want to fight for Britain?
It was the spirit of adventure which prompted so many of them. A young man who joined up could be assured not only of the adventure that he sought, but also plenty of food, rations, meat.
They loved it. They loved being a soldier. Some of them walked miles. When I say miles, I mean probably 100 miles to come and join the army. And I think that it was because they would be somebody. They get their food and they get their clothing.
to get away from the cloying closeness of the village, to see the world, to get away from an unfortunate marriage or an engagement to a woman that you don't really want to marry, or to try and earn money. You'd heard about money. Money enabled you to buy things. It gave you greater independence.
They regarded their army service, I think, as a job more than... I don't think there was any great feeling of patriotism there. I didn't gather that. They were very different from us. They hadn't the benefit of education that we had, but they were human beings, and most of them with a great sense of humour as well.
Here in London, it's taken the British a long time to acknowledge their war debt to Africa and to the rest of the empire. But in this story, there is one great irony. Because by recruiting all those African men to defend their empire, the British in the end may have undermined it. At the end of the war, most of those African soldiers came home, and they brought with them new ideas, new perspectives. They travelled the world after all. And those who were in the jungles of Burma saw that white and black are not so different after all, that we're all capable of courage, cowardice, intelligence, stupidity. We're all human. And as more and more Africans came to understand that, Britain's imperial authority was fatally undermined.
India, on the eve of independence, turned to the Mahatma for guidance.
In India, Gandhi was already leading a freedom struggle. Officers in the British Army worried he might influence Africans. Isaac actually saw Gandhi on his journey across India. Although he wasn't thinking about independence for Nigeria, other African soldiers say they did pick up subversive ideas about freedom.
Well, I think these feelings are contagious. One must remember that in India there had been the movement for independence long before the outbreak of the war. In every country, the word gets round, doesn't it? And movements, small or large, form and capture the mood and say, why should we remain as under a colonial ruler?
In early 1944, there were more immediate concerns. African troops went into combat, and the Japanese fought ferociously, suffering heavy casualties.
The Japs had met their masters in jungle warfare. They left ample proof of this.
For the
fact
Africans,
behind them.
a baptism of fire in the green hell of the jungle. Jack Osborne led Nigerian troops in Burma. He is 102 years old and still haunted by what he saw.
I had soldiers to bury horridly, without any service, without any record of where I'd put them. And I think we don't give sufficient thought to those men who died on the route, in jungle, in conditions where we simply had to leave them if we couldn't carry out a very horrid burial. And they have no memorial.
Do we pay enough credit to them?
No. No, I don't think they were acknowledged properly to what they did, yes. They lost quite a lot of men, and on the whole they fought well. I said before, the most cheerful of soldiers of the lot, I think.
The huge majority of us felt privileged to command these men and to earn their respect and to have them following us into action, or indeed, if they were scouts, leading us into action.
A war between two great empires, Britain and Japan, struggling for control of Asia, leaving hundreds of thousands of dead. And memorials in London, in Lagos, in Japan, whose army suffered the worst of all. More than half of the Japanese soldiers who went to Burma never came back.
We've got to understand the times in which we lived. It would not happen again, clearly. I believe what that period was, it could be described as a last flourish of empire, never to be repeated.
It was time to pick up Isaac's story again. But first he invited me to a party, Sunday lunch with the family. His daughters and grandchildren are doctors, teachers, designers, photographers, full of the creativity and energy that I always loved in Nigeria. Although Isaac must wonder if they can understand what he went through in the war. Because in February 1944, his story was about to take a fateful turn. Isaac and his colleagues were getting closer to the Japanese. He was in a medical unit, not prepared for the horror of what was to come. But he saw the fighting around him and realized how war destroys so many lives so quickly.
I don't like war at all. People will be killed, some people will be maimed, some people will be impoverished. Over what? As human beings, we should be able to sit together and solve our problems peacefully.
It was March the 2nd, 1944. Isaac and his colleagues were having breakfast on the west bank of the Caledon River. It was a scene similar to this. But they had no idea the Japanese were on the opposite bank, poised to open fire.
When we were attacked, when the shots rang out at 8 o'clock, quack, 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 tried to take over. We were not quite at the front. We were not expecting attack at all. I didn't know I was hit by a bullet. I didn't know. It was when I tried to crawl. I couldn't crawl anymore. I was tired. I've lost a lot of blood. I couldn't crawl. My trousers was soaked in blood, and my battle jacket soaked in blood. It was then I realized that I was in trouble, big trouble. Where do I go from here, God? It was like a dream. Is this me boy?
Isaac and his African colleagues in the British Army were deep in the Burmese jungle. They'd been attacked. Isaac lay in agony beside the Caledon River, his closest friends dead all around him. He still carries the wounds from that day. A bullet smashed his leg. He's had many operations, but has been disabled ever since. Another bullet went through his side.
We're in enemy Japanese occupied territory. If they see us, they're going to kill us. They don't take us prisoner, no. It's the British people, white people, they take the prisoner. They don't take us prisoner, they kill us.
The Japanese soldiers took weapons and clothes from the dead. Then they saw Isaac lying helpless, covered in blood.
They came to me, two of them, two or three of them. The leader threatened me with a bayonet or a battle. I said, I should get up. Get up. They were talking their language. I can't get up, you know. I can't even sit up.
But they didn't shoot him. They probably decided he was going to die anyway.
What idea did you have of them? What impression? Do you fear them? Do you respect them? What did you think of them?
Well, they're very good fighters. Japanese people, They fight to the last man, the last hand of ammunition, the last drop of blood. They are dogged fighters.
Isaac's story must mean little to all those jostling for survival on the streets outside. But if Lagos is a city transformed from the 1940s, so too is Tokyo. Here, the pace of modern life can be overwhelming. But it hasn't swept away an older culture. I came to Japan wanting to find people with vivid memories of some of the worst moments of the 20th century. The very men who Isaac feared and admired.
This is where the Japanese military honors its dead, the Yasukuni Shrine in Tokyo. The Japanese army ultimately paid a terrible price for the suffering which it helped unleash in the war, nowhere more so than in the jungles of Burma. In the very months that Isaac Fadeyebo was lying injured in those jungles, the Japanese retreat began. Tens of thousands of its soldiers died, mostly from disease and starvation. They called it the Road of Bones. There are very few Japanese survivors today of the Burma campaign, and only a handful who actually remember encountering African troops. We've managed to track some of them down.
Kuniyoshi Nako was in the Caladan Valley just like Isaac at exactly the same time, and the first man he ever shot was an African.
下を見たらアフガン人が日本の陣地を買って上へ変わってみようんですよ、上を。これはもう日本の陣地偵察しようになってるんで山の上から撃ったんです。もしおるんだったら何かのお見舞い しようかと思うぐらいです。死んどんだったらまあ1000個でも差し上げたいと思っております。それが分かればですよ。
Of Kuniyoshi's unit of 100 men, 18 made it home to Japan.
日本軍はもうね、捕虜になったら絶対あかんって、捕虜になるんだったら地獄せっていう命令ですわ。それでもうあっちでもこっちで私の目の前でも通りにいたんだなと思ったら自爆する。そういうのがもうジャングルの中でも何も起こって。
亡くなった戦友友達ですね。亡くなった戦友をいつも負けた戦争なもんですから土の中へ埋めてあげられなかったことです。友達を何にも本当にお弔いっていうかお葬式を出してあげられないで、しかも完全に土の中へ埋められないで帰ってきてしまったということが今でも申し訳ないと思ってます。それがあります。だからそれのためにまあ今でも毎年ビル前行ってあちらこちらで戦友の亡くなったところで拝んできております。
After the surrender, some Japanese soldiers were guarded by Africans, like Toshio Yamaoka.
とにかくアフリカ兵は体格がいいよね。そして筋肉がこういうふうにもりもりもとした筋肉が。それで石切り場ですからドライバーかなんかでこう石を打ちますね。日本兵は2人いる。2人。2ソルジャーズ。向こうは1ソルジャーで、ドラドラドラそんなに強いですよ。
They scared the Japs to begin with, and the Japs saw these hulking great blacks with filed teeth and slashed cheeks. They were pretty scared, as I must say some English white soldiers were when they were mixed up with them.
After the attack, Isaac was close to death. He couldn't crawl, let alone walk. For days, covered in flies and pus, He lay in his own feces and urine, dressed only in filthy rags. Most injured African soldiers received good medical care from the British, but Isaac was stranded behind enemy lines, lost in a hostile land, given up for dead in the jungle. But there was another injured African, David Kagbo from Sierra Leone. They comforted each other, and they had one vital stroke of luck. They were near a village of Bengalis of Indian origin who supported the British, unlike many Burmese. These people brought food and water, and in the weeks that followed, one man kept on coming back. His name was Suleiman.
The people who saved you, why did they save you, and who were they?
Maybe they were sent by God to come and save our lives. Mostly Indians. They were bringing us food. They can come a day or two, they fall out. Many of them, it was Suleiman who continued. They did so much, particularly Suleiman for us. He took us to the house. Very courageous. Because if Japanese know, they will kill him and kill us. He took us to the house.
What do these people mean to you?
They were very kind to me. They were sent by God to take care of me. Very kind people.
For months, Isaac and David Kagbo hid in Suleiman's house. The Japanese looked for them, but never found them. And in December 1944, the Japanese retreated. The British Army marched into Suleiman's village. Isaac was free, evacuated by plane. He returned home to Nigeria, forever scarred, but amazed to still be alive.
We are turning left.
This is the older part of the village.
Oh yeah, this is really. Turn left, huh?
And this is where Isaac returned to after the war, his home village in rural Yoruba land. Now he wanted me to see the village. He wanted to show me where he received a hero's welcome all those years ago.
Yeah, a whole crowd. People were following me behind. As if I was holding a goat, you know.
Yeah. And where he is now a respected elder.
I remember you. I remember your face now. How are you? If people have taken you as dead, you know, and you suddenly appear, it's tendency for them to throw sand on you. Because by throwing sand on you, if you are a ghost, you disappear. But if it's a reality, we stay. They were throwing sand on me left and right. Everybody greeted me. Nobody thought I would come back. They thought I had gone. The same family, and then we met the captain of
Isaac is building a house in the village. We formed an inspection party to go and see. He wanted to show me one room in particular.
It's good, it's good.
Sitting room, Okay. That I'm going to name after Suleiman.
Okay.
My chief host in Burma, Suleiman. This is who I've done so much for.
So you're naming this room after the man who saved your life?
Oh, yes. Whom God sent to save my life. Very nice man. Oh, I wish I could see his people again. Very, very, very nice man. Himself, his wife, his daughter, Gulasha. Oh, they were wonderful.
As we drove back to Lagos, I decided I had to go to Burma, now known as Myanmar, and try and find Suleiman's family. Isaac wanted to come, but his daughters, perhaps wisely, felt he was too frail to make the journey. So he wrote a letter he wanted me to give to Suleiman's family, if I could find them. He'd had no contact for 67 years. When he was in hiding, Isaac went by the Muslim name of Suleiman, so that the villagers would think he shared their faith. So now he has to explain that Isaac and Suleiman are in fact the same person.
My real name is Isaac Faraway. I had to pretend that I'm a Muslim because I needed help. Hence, the adoption of Suleiman. I would like to thank the entire family of Suleiman and all the good people for taking care of me and my comrade in adversity, David Cargo, when we were in hiding in Burma jungle.
So we will take this.
You can take it away. I think there must be remnants of Suleimans in the village. It's a farm, a small place. Rural area, completely rural. I don't know.
I flew to Myanmar pretending to be a tourist. Its government does not welcome journalists, so we took a concealed camera. I found an enchanting, isolated country of devout Buddhists and ancient temples. A beautiful land, largely cut off from the outside world. And I found rain like I'd never seen before. It was the monsoon. Fun for the novice monks in the temples, but for Isaac, lying injured in the jungle in this same season, it must have been hell. I had one important mission in the capital, Yangon, the cemetery for the British war dead. More than 26,000 names, many African. Whatever we think of the British Empire, it is meticulous in honouring its dead. I found the two men who died right next to Isaac in the attack, Archibong Bassett Duke and David Thompson Essien. Proof of the accuracy of Isaac's memory, it gave me hope in the search for Suleiman's village. I travelled inland and prepared to board a boat on the Caladan River. I was heading up the same river that Isaac had come down in 1944. The landscape seemed vast and daunting. I had only rough directions for where to go. I had to assume Suleiman was dead. He was much older than Isaac in the war. But would his village be intact? Would his family be there? Would they know anything of Isaac's story? I arrived in the ancient city of Oulu, capital of a long-lost kingdom, a magical place of crumbling temples.
The ruins here at Oulu are very close to where Isaac Faraway was ambushed. But of course, he never got this far. Although later in the war, there was fierce fighting around here, much of it involving African troops. They would have felt a long way from home in this strange and beautiful place.
I wandered the temples and worried that my mission was hopeless. I didn't know that my search was about to bear fruit.
Now, we've just had very good news here back in our hotel room. We sent a guide to the village where we think Suleiman's family should still be living. We can't go there ourselves because we've been refused permission. It's near a military base and it would attract too much attention. It wouldn't be safe. Now, the guide has come back and he says that he's found Suleiman's family and they know all about the story of Isaac Faraway.
So we set out early the next day for an agreed rendezvous. I now know that Suleiman and his daughter Gulasha are dead, but we're hoping to meet other children and grandchildren.
We're very close now to the place where we've arranged to meet Suleiman's family. It seems incredible that this meeting actually could take place, and I'm very nervous and excited.
The last miles were just about negotiable. I arrived at a jungle temple, a discreet place, and there I waited anxiously. But when they appeared, we were almost lost for words.
This is the daughter of Suleiman. Yes, the sister. Hello. How are you? Hey. I'm very happy to see you. Very happy. I never thought...
The children and grandchildren of Suleiman, poor farmers in a remote part of a faraway country, born after the war, but they've known the legend of the African soldiers all their lives.
A long time ago, your father and your mother did something very, very brave. They in a time of great danger, they risked their lives because if they had been caught, the Japanese would have killed them because it was war. One of the men who you remember, a man from Nigeria, he is alive and he is still strong, thanks to your family. Suleiman, his real name in Nigeria is Isaac Fadeyebo. And this man, Isaac, or Suleiman, he wants you to know that he thinks of your mother and your father every day, and he gives thanks to God. So, of course, your mother and father and your sister Gulasha are no longer with us. And although we are from different countries and different regions, maybe we should just stop for one moment and honor their memory and respect their memory in silence.
They never imagined the good deeds of their parents are still celebrated on the other side of the world. And I never imagined I would hear Isaac's story one more time, only this time spoken in Bengali, deep in the jungle. Suleiman's grandson recalls details handed down from generation to generation.
When you heard the news yesterday that this man in Africa is still alive, what did you think? These photos are for you, of course. So this is him. Yes. Suleiman. Ha. Suleiman. Oh. Here is also Suleiman. And this Suleiman. Same man.
These good people, whose family gave Isaac everything, above all the chance to rebuild his life in Africa after the war.
Now I will read you the letter that he says. From Isaac Fadayebo, also known as Suleiman. He has two names, same man. He's writing, to the family of Suleiman, I would like to thank the entire family of Suleiman and all the good people for taking care of me when we were hiding in the Burma jungle. I still remember some names from the village.
I still remember a few names like Mohammed, Ali, Ismail, Abdul Subahan, the village headmaster, the village teacher, Lalu, to mention a few of those who were coming to see us in the bush. May God bless you all. Yours sincerely, Isaac Fadayebo.
May God bless you all. God's blessings to you all. Yours sincerely, Isaac Fadayebo, Suleiman.
I called Isaac in Lagos and told him that I'd found Suleiman's family. He was overwhelmed. But I'm the one who feels enriched by our friendship and by uncovering the story of one of the last Burma boys. A man saved by strangers and now all but forgotten by those he fought for. A hero who once thought he'd never even make it home.
It's a surprise that I survived it. It's a miracle. It's a miracle. As far as I'm concerned, I see it as the greatest miracle since the resurrection of Jesus Christ, as far as I'm concerned. It's a miracle, a very big miracle. I never thought I could survive it. I thought I was going to die.